In the name of the Center for Jewish Studies at the University of São Paulo and the Jewish Academy of CP and the international group Bogrei Chazit, I welcome you. I welcome Dr. Ze'ev Begin, with whom we have the pleasure of talking with today. We shall be three interviewing you today, Ze'ev. I welcome Gabriel Ben Tasgal, a journalist and Israeli writer, and Eduardo Novogrebelski from Bogrei Chazit, Brazil. A bit of a presentation. My paper just. Dr. Ze'ev Begin is an Israeli geologist and politician. He was a member of the Knesset for New Hope Party, having previously served as a member for Likud and for Herut. He served as Minister of Science and twice as Minister without portfolio. He was born in Jerusalem to Aliza and Menachem Begin, and studied geology at the Hebrew University, Jerusalem, the same university where his mother, Aliza, studied archaeology. As a geologist, Ze'ev Begin worked at the Geological Survey of Israel, where he had the Environmental Geology and Hydrology Division, and also the Mapping, Marine Geology, and Computer Center Division. He was also the coordinator of studies on the sitting of the nuclear power plant in Israel. Our conversation today will focus on Dr. Ze'ev Begin's role as a researcher at MEMRI, the Middle East Media Research Institute, which is an independent, non-profit, non-partisan organization that has been bridging for 2 decades the language and the cultural gap between the West and the Middle East and South Asia, providing translations and analysis to inform academia, media, governments, and the public at large, worldwide, about the complexity of issues and development in all these countries, assisting them in fighting extremism and terrorism. So now the word is with you, Ze'ev. Thank you very much for being with us today. It is a pleasure. It is an honor. I give you the word.
Thank you, Suzana. So maybe instead of a regular Zoom meeting, it will be more like a radio show, but that happens these days for this problem. So we'll talk today about terror perpetrated by fundamentalist Islamists. And first, we'll define an act of terror. I'm taking it from the Israeli law. An act of terror is, the definition has 2 parts. It is motivated by a political, religious, nationalistic, or ideological motive. And 2, it is aimed at either arousing public fear or coercing a government to act or to refrain from acting. And when you take that definition and you apply it to organizations, then of course the conclusion is that terror organizations pose threat to democracies. So we'll discuss today fundamentalist Islamists that are bunches of groups of fundamentalist Islamists that form terrorist organizations, and what makes them distinct from most other Muslims is that the fundamentalist Islamists literally apply 7th and 8th, 9th century religious edicts and traditions of Islam. Now, just a list of terrorist organizations that have arisen from fundamentalist Islam, like Al-Qaeda, Taliban, the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, ISIS, Boko Haram in Nigeria, and Hamas. Up to now, all of these are Sunni Islamists, and then Hezbollah and Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which of course are Shiites. Now we have to take note of the fact that when I look at the numbers, so maybe the total number of the members in these organizations is about, say, 250,000, 250,000. But worldwide, we have 2 billion Muslims. So these fundamentalist Islamic terrorists comprise only 0.1 of a per mil. And therefore, we should refrain from the definition or the name used by many politicians, Islamic terrorism. It's wrong because most Muslims are not a part of it. So what I prefer is to talk about terror by fundamentalist Islamists. Now, because fundamentalist Islamic terrorists view martyrdom as a goal, they are very difficult to deter. There is nothing new in what I'm telling you. And therefore, the recognition of faith-based nature of the fundamentalist Islamic terrorism is, of course, vital for efficient action taken against that threat. I'll give you an example, and a very miserable example. The World Trade Center was actually attacked 20 years before the final blow in 1993. A car bomb exploded by the World Trade Center, killed 6, wounded, as they say, in different ways, about 1,000 people in New York. And there was in New York, they lived at the time, he died already. There was an Egyptian preacher, an imam, Sheikh Abdul Rahman, also known as the blind preacher. And in his sermons in 3 different New York mosques, Sheikh Abdul Rahman radicalized his followers, and among other subjects, he called for the toppling of what he called the pillars of Western civilization, and in which meant at the time it was a hint directed at the World Trade Center. And in one of the suspects' home, the FBI found boxes with Islamic inciting pamphlets and pictures of the World Trade Center. Now, these boxes with Islamic inciting pamphlets was taken by the FBI and shelved, unread, unnoticed, under the label irrelevant religious stuff. So that's a lesson that was already hopefully by many, but I think it's very telling. So we have to be cognizant of the fact that according to a book that was that was published some years ago. I like the title, A Passion for Ignorance. And there is maybe such passion. Sometimes people do not want to know, or they demonstrate ignorance otherwise. I'll give you now a recent example of that. On October 25th, that is 2 weeks after the heinous attack on our communities in southern Israel, the United Nations General Secretary, Mr. Guterres, opened the UN Security Council meeting on October 25th, and inter alia, he noted the following quote: "It is important to also recognize that the attacks by Hamas did not happen in vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subject as a kind of even justification for the attack, with whatever reservation he had or he uttered otherwise." So let's examine this proposal. It was a vacuum, and this is the reason. So about 2 or 3 days later, one of Hamas leaders, Musa Abu Marzouk, gave an interview in a Russian TV program, and the moderator, it was in Arabic, and the moderator asked him the following: "Many people are asking, since you have built 500 kilometers of tunnels, why haven't you built bomb shelters where civilians can hide during bombardment?" And Musa Abu Marzouk responded thus: "These tunnels are meant to protect us," meaning Hamas, "from the airplanes. We are fighting from inside the tunnels." And then he added, 75% of the people in the Gaza Strip are refugees, and it is the responsibility of the United Nations to protect them. In other words, we in Hamas couldn't care less for the civilian population in Gaza. We are safe, we are protected, and it's the responsibility of the United Nations to protect them. And so we shove it away from our shoulders, which shows, of course, that they didn't really attack because of certain yoke that we Israelis imposed upon them. Translated to deeds. But when you examine deeds and you dig a little bit, you find always, I think, that they started, that were ignited by words, and if it's terrorist act, then by incitement. So let's look at the Hamas charter, the Hamas acronym. Hamas stands for the Islamic Resistance Movement, and let's look at Article 8 in their 1988 charter. Here it goes, quote, "Allah is our goal. The Prophet is our model," meaning Muhammad, of course. "The Quran is our constitution. Jihad is our..." You have to think too much when you look at these words and you connect them with the atrocities of Hamas. But for many years, many people around the world hear these words, they read them, and they never take them serious. words, but no, these are words, activity. Let's look at Article 11 of the Hamas Charter. The Islamic resistance movement believes that the land of Palestine is an Islamic waqf is an Islamic term which is translated into inalienable endowment of property, holy piece of property, and they continue. It's Islamic waqf, consecrated for future Muslim generations until Judgment Day. Or any part of it should not be given up. And that's no theory. I have here with me some parts of another interview given to a Lebanese TV station on October, and he said the following, as follows: the existence of Israel is what causes all that pain and tears. The moderator, and he says, I'm sorry, the occupation must come to an end. The news anchor asks, occupation where? In the Gaza Strip? And he answers, no, I'm talking about all the Palestinian lands. So the anchor continues asking, does that mean the annihilation of Israel? And Hamad says, yes, of course. Again, I don't think that anyone in his right mind, or for that matter, in his left mind, cannot take it seriously, or can belittle these words. And it's very nicely tied to the charter. That's what they believe in, and that's what they act in order to realize it. Now, these organizations have the tendency to flock together. Birds of feather flock together. And what I see here is a picture taken in 2012 in Tehran, in Iran, with the Supreme Leader Khamenei. On the left, I see the now well-known face of Yahya Sinwar, the mind behind the attack, and also Ismail Haniyeh, the other leader of Hamas, and they sit together with others, and they seem to have good time. I wanted to show you another picture taken 2 weeks ago with the same Ismail Haniyeh, the Hamas leader, meeting with some leaders of the Afghan Taliban in Tehran, May 22nd, 2024. They all flock together. They belong to actually the same picture. Haniyeh with Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader again, on May 26, 2024, that's 2 weeks ago. And Khamenei is quoted to have said, it's in the Iranian channels, it is possible to realize also the erasing of the Zionist regime with Allah's grace. The day shall come in which Palestine shall be created from the river to the sea. Between the river to the sea, if there is only a liberated Palestine there, there's no room for the Jewish state of Israel. So that was on May 26, from the river to the sea. And now we pause for a minute, like a comic pause. And what I would like to quote here, and there's a nice picture of a very nice lady. She is Spain's deputy prime minister, Miss Yolanda Diaz, May 24th, again, 2 weeks ago, 2 days before Khamenei. And she had a short speech, and now I quote, I think in Spanish, Palestina's, I'll say that she speaks out of ignorance, but it's pretty amazing that these people these days echo each other. Of course, Hassan Nasrallah, as always, has also had on several occasions, and what you should try and envisage is now a map that I show of the Middle East in green, the Iran and its proxies, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and Hamas in Gaza. From all these countries and places, we were attacked in the last 8 months. They launched rockets, they launched drones, and that's almost, of course, on a weekly basis, sometimes on a monthly basis. But that's not the only map that the Islamic it's named the Islamic Republic of Iran, and these fundamentalist Islamists aspire for. Portugal and Spain at that time, called Andalus, southern France, the whole of northern Africa, to the Middle East, and eastwards towards Iran. These are the boundaries of the Islamic Empire in the 8th century. Additional quotations we have here. Last month, a month ago, May 7th, 2024, Hussein Salami is the commander of the Shiite Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, and he said on that meeting, the main aim of the revolution was to revive the greatness of Islam in the current era and to save the Islamic nation from slavery under the tyranny of the West. So the whole West is their enemy because it deprives them from that ancient caliphate that was under their control. So you might say, of course, here's a Shiite leader, a crazy Iranian, but let's go, excuse me, 4 years ago to Cairo and to the things that Sheikh Ahmad al-Taib, the Sheikh of Al-Azhar University, this is the world's foremost institution in Sunni Islam. And on January 2020, he had some debate with people. He said, the Islamic Church, 80 years, enabled them to place one foot in Al-Andalus and another in China. And then he continued, what set it in motion. Wasn't it the Sharia and the heritage? The Sharia, of course, it's not a theoretical ambition. It's with them. If that they don't have the ability to concretize it is a different issue. But you see that it burns there. And so let's now turn to an imam in a mosque in Canada, West, and these are sources of incitement for extremism and for terrorism in the name of Allah and extreme fundamentalist Islam. So let's see how he interprets it. The Prophet Muhammad told us that Constantinople would be conquered. This was the capital city of the Byzantine Empire. Today, it is in Turkey. And he continued, the last caliphate of the Muslims ruled about half of Europe. The countries of Al-Andalus, Spain, Portugal, and part of France, all the way to the Ural Mountains. All this was an Islamic caliphate. And now he continues. Oral tradition following the Quran, the Prophet Hadith is true, for he does not speak on a whim. This is in Canada, Alberta. This is in Edmonton, a fine city. And these people, these imams, have people that live in them. April 25th, 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago, there was that encampment at the George Washington University, and there appeared before them the executive director of the organization called American Muslims for Palestine. And among other things, that's what he said. I have the video in front of me. We will take back these colleges as we will take back America, as we will take back Palestine, as we will take back our humanity. So from these Muslims, from their point of view, America, something to be taken back. The flames are there. Maybe they are low, but they are there. So again, what makes fundamentalist Islamists distinct is that they advocate the adherence to the behavioral norms of early Muslims from the 7th or 8th century. It looks bizarre, so I'll try, well, I cannot show you, but I'll try to demonstrate it verbally. We have here a video or some still pictures from videos of ISIS, of the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria from 2014 at their peak. And the video that they released shows the stoning of a woman who was accused of adultery. And here's the sheikh standing next to her father. She asked for forgiveness. Forgive me, father, forgive me. He refuses. And the sheikh says, you are the first woman in this area on whom we are implementing the punishment of stoning for adultery. The mechanism is that they dig a ditch in, or dig a hole in the ground. They put the victim there, and then they pelt them, they stone them until they die. And he asks the sheikh, are you pleased with the punishment decreed by Allah? And I think she nods. So he says, good. And it goes on. And she's being killed. So again, you could say, well, you know, this is ISIS. They beheaded people. They're a bunch of loonies. But let's turn again to the Islamic Republic of Iran. There's here an Iranian politician, Muhammad Javad Larijani. There are 4 Larijani brothers who assumed quite important roles in Iran, in the parliament, in government, etc. And he gave an interview to an Iranian station, and there he says he was to the Fars or website of the Revolutionary Guard, and he was the former secretary of the High Council of Human Rights. And that's what he said. Stoning is a very important restraining law to protect the marriage contract of families. And that's last year. I think, again, I'm amazed. I've been reading it maybe a dozen times, and I'm still amazed. I'm showing here a still picture of a video clip from, again, a New York cleric, Mr. Ibn Munir, 2018. That's what he told his followers. Islam without jihad is like honey without the sweetness. That's all in New York City. And again, it rolls on. It's on television, and it's on the internet, and they disseminate it, and it's rather efficient. So next, what I show here is a book that we got from the IDF, from our army, that was caught in Gaza several months ago. And it's a book by Hamas, a book of religious studies and fatwas. Fatwa is the religious edict. And that was published, it's quite voluminous. It was published in 2021. And there's a chapter there of fatwas concerning jihad. One of them concerns the question, fatwas are responses to questions. What are the limitations on the timing of a jihad action by an individual? Another question, is it allowed to kill wounded enemies? Another pertinent question, how to pray in a tunnel? It's their business. It really interests them. It's a part of their life. And I turn now to another pamphlet that is, again, ISIS, 2014. It was issued, I have the picture of the pamphlet here, of the title, by the Research and Fatwa Department of the Islamic State. And the title is Questions and Answers on Taking Captives and Slaves. Okay, would you believe that? Question number 4. Is it permissible to have intercourse with a female captive? Answer. It is permissible to have sexual intercourse with the female captive. Allah the Almighty said, "Successful are the believers who guard their chastity, except from their wives or the captives and slaves that their right hands possess, for then they are free from blame." That's a quotation from Quran 23, 5, 6, etc. And that's the expression. Their right hands possess. They own the captive women. Question 5. Is it permissible to have intercourse with a female captive immediately after taking possession of her? Answer. If she is a virgin, he, that is her master, can have intercourse with her immediately after taking possession. And I ask again, would you believe that people print it, that people ask it formally, that they get formal responses, answers from their sages? But again, you could say, well, okay, this is ISIS, these are loonies, what can we learn from it? Okay, at the same time, I have another video clip here showing a lady. She is an Al-Azhar University in Cairo, professor of theology. Her name is Suat Saleh, and she answers questions on a TV, I think, weekly show called Fatwa. And that's what she explains. When Islam emerged, it put slavery into order. The female prisoners of wars are, quote, those whom you own. With ISIS, they also called it that your right hand owns. And the professor says, are those whom you own. And you can have sex with them just like he has sex with his wives. Wives in the plural, of course. So actually, what this professor preaches to is that she says, well, if she is a slave girl, then it is allowed by her opinion of this professor to commit permanent rape of a young or an older lady just because she became captive. She was caught in the battleground or when they raided a village. And I think, again, it's pretty amazing. And that's in the Al-Azhar University, and the title of the lady there is a professor of theology. Therefore, it should not be surprise us that from the lawyer, Pramila Patten, the special United Nations representative on March 20, 2024, addressed the United Nations Security Council and said, we found clear and convincing information, and she underlined it, clear and convincing information, that is following Hamas attack on October 7th, that sexual violence, including rape, sexualized torture, and cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment has been committed against hostages, and we have reasonable grounds to believe that such violence may still be ongoing against those in captivity, all under fundamentalist Islamic law, the realization, the application of 6th century, 7th century, 8th century habits. All other people have advanced. 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, even Jews and Christians used to stone or to commit atrocities. But we have come a long way to modernize ourselves. And these people try to draw all Islam to their way, which is why, of course, they are very, very dangerous. And I think it's abhorring that people find excuses and demonstrate understanding for their motives when they perpetrate that kind of primitive behavior. So my last message is the following. Last week I found it in Europe in one of the channels. Here's the headline: Paris Olympics. ISIS circulates quote unquote detailed attack manuals on using drones to hit games. This is not a nuisance. This is a real threat to democracy, and it has to be taken seriously. Islamic Fundamentalist Terror led by Iran these days is a threat to society. Thank you. Okay. I don't hear you.
Thank you, Ze'ev. Thank you.
Okay.
It is. We had a little problem with the connection. It is such an urgent theme, such important. We let's afterwards. Let's try to bring to our public the material you prepared, because it's amazingly important and astonishing. I just wanted to forward a question of Victor, but before we have seen that the lines between civilians and terrorists is very blurred. We saw in Gaza the teacher, a journalist, incarcerated Israeli hostages in their homes with their families. In this regard, the question is the population in Yehuda v'Shomron and Gaza are mostly Muslims and Sunni. Israel has peace agreements with Egypt, Jordan, Morocco, the Emirates, all Muslims, and somehow Israelis can visit there and feel safe. Gaza 20 years ago was not a fundamentalist. Only 15 years of Hamas domination transformed it into a prevailing fundamentalist. How do you see the chances to reach an understanding in which, or an understatement in which we can live side by side with this huge Muslim population, now 1/3 and maybe soon half, and maybe a majority in this so very small piece of land?
I think we can. I think we can. We eliminate these hoodlums. If we eliminate these terrorists, and I try to show, I don't know if I convinced all of our audience here, that this is really a fundamental issue. That's what they really believe in, and they work for its realization, which is why they're so dangerous. They cannot be deterred. It has been shown that they cannot be deterred if they love to reach paradise through a being a shaheed, being a martyr, then we don't have an alternative. I'll just remind you that America and its allies did a lot in an attempt to eliminate, and practically were quite successful, ISIS only several years ago, because they reached the conclusion that these people cannot be educated. You cannot preach to them and convince them and say, oh, you know, look at us, we're so good, we want to be friendly with you. All these are nonsense. Some people in the West try to make us believe that this is possible until they themselves would be hit on their head. And we're only 20 years after 9/11. I mean, how long can people refrain from learning or to that's they would prefer ignorance. So we have to get rid of this yoke of this rest, leave Judea and Samaria and have an agreement with the Palestinian Authority there and the people, but there's only one possibility out of the two. Either Israel is in Judea and Samaria, or Hamas and Iran are in Samaria and Judea, that some people call, or many people call, the West Bank. This is it. And we have to be realistic. It is regrettable that many people here in Israel, my fellow politicians, did not see it coming before October 7th, and we thought that maybe we can satisfy the tiger, but it was of no avail. These people have no limits, and the Iranians make it their business to arrive directly or indirectly at our doorstep, and they are on our doorstep. They are in Syria. They have expeditionary forces in Syria, and they launch their missiles and their rockets and their drones from Iran to Israel. All this must be taken seriously. You don't know, no one knows of any other democracy on the globe that for weeks and months now has been attacked by 6 or 7 different political entities and attacked with these rockets and drones. So just suppose what a country like Brazil would do if from the 3-point border people would infiltrate and kill. And I don't want to multiply the number, to compare the population. Just 1,000, okay, not 20,000. What would they do to the neighboring country from which they arrived? So, and then we are preached to, and people admonish us and say, hey, wait a minute, you have to behave, you are cultured people. And then they put us on a blacklist by this ignorant Mr. Gutierrez, or just a politician. Could you repeat that, please? Well, the Americans, of course, help us a lot, and they know quite a lot about terrorism, although I regret to say that they let, quite amazingly, they let the Taliban back in Afghanistan and just threw out the democratically elected government there. That was only 2-3 years ago. And but they're aware, and of course the British and some other countries, France, but they are also only helping. They are not in the business of eradicating these groups. They refrain from actually these days from even touching Iran. They know it is the International Atomic Energy Commission organization that openly declares that Iran amasses or has amassed great quantities of enriched uranium that it could use in a very short period of time in order to produce a bomb. So what did they do? They issue reports. That's it. And this is now the center from which this hatred and poison of terrorism emanates.
Yes. Eduardo from Bugrei Chazit is here with us, and he has a question as well. Eduardo, you here? Eduardo?
Okay. You hear?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Well, first, Ze'ev or Binyamin, I don't know what is your real name, I'm confused, Anyway, what I wanted to say is, first, thank you very much for being with us today. I apologize for the problems that we had, technical problems, but justify the message that you gave to us. I have 7 more questions I will not do because I think that the message that you give to us is a key message.
Ask one. Okay, ask the first one, and we'll see. Go ahead. Don't be bashful.
Well, I will do. What we will do with the Bedouins in Israel? You are a specialist. You were the responsible to pour order, and these people are loose in the middle of all this confusion. Bedouins.
What was the question? Could you repeat it?
The question is, according to the international press, Bedouins in Israel are not finding their way, how to live there. And I didn't want to ask, but if you ask it, I say, please, what is the problem with the Bedouins?
Oh, well.
I didn't want to ask,
Well, I'll try to be short. This is an issue that I was responsible for dealing with 10 years ago. I brought in a proposal. It was rejected from left and right and the center. People didn't like it, which is not a proof, but it indicates that maybe I was right, or I was on the right track. Well, the issue is first is a long-term problem, and I'll try to describe it to the crux of the problem. This is a very poor group of people. They're much less educated than other groups in the country. They're on the rise. They make progress, but with their dwelling, we have a problem, and the problem is the following. We cannot develop we need to develop 10 or 12 or so villages and towns in which they live without the proper installation, without electricity, and without water, and without proper school buildings, etc. And the issue there is that the Bedouin tribes in southern Israel have what we call land claims. They claim that some parcels of the land in southern Israel belong to them, inherited from their forefathers. So whatever the fact is, the government of Israel agreed many years ago to come to terms with them. And even though there's no legal basis for it, to try and come up with a compromise so that they will get some compensation by land and some compensation by money, and then we'll settle the issue. And that was my proposition. It failed, and therefore now I don't see a close solution to the issue. Of course, we cannot allow hoodlums and crime to perpetrate in the Negev, and there should be policing there. But people are trying. There is some progress during the years. Quite many of them now have reached academic degrees, and they hold high positions in the Negev or otherwise. And so I think I should stop here. It is indeed complex.
Mr. Begin, Victor, that he lives near you in Haifa, he's asking, say to Mr. Begin that we want to record once more all this conversation, another question, because you open a completely, it's very, very interesting what you are saying. On the one hand, the dangers that Israel and the Jewish people lives. On the other hand, the distance, the lack of recognizing this reality. And you have a lot of information. And you know, when Victor said to me 15 days or 1 month ago, he said, Eduardo, we have the opportunity to interview Mr. Begin. It was at night. He called me and said, yes, because you are a testimony of history and you have a sensibility that that we need to hear, you know?
I'm just an old man, Eduardo. I'm just an old guy, that's it.
Yeah,
But I've had some experience, yes. And I think that maybe a way to to continue in this education, if I may say so, is to enter the site of MEMRI. We renew material on a daily basis.
I did.
And you can look into the archive, etc.
Yes.
It's all there. Or read our material. I'm just finishing now an article on this issue, on the fundamentals of fundamentalist Islam, which is rather close to what I try to present here. So that's another way to do it. So you don't really need agents like myself. You can learn it. You can look at it directly. And of course, there are other sources. But this is at least not biased. You know, it's unbiased. And the video clips are very convincing. You see the guy talking, or that lady professor who says, yes, you can have sex with your slave. I mean, things from a professor. So you can find it there, and it's very difficult to argue then. And I think it's important to disseminate it.
Suzana.
It's very, very important, very urgent. We will try to re-edit this whole interview and for the public to have access to the material we couldn't see. I think it's an opportunity that we cannot miss. I want to end this with two questions. One, how can we, what measures are effective in avoiding fundamentalism to spread within the Palestinian community? What is being made to stop this? It is so appealing. It's more appealing than anything else. You think so?
It becomes very difficult to be candid, because in the last 20 years, they found a wonderful venue for that. They have the internet. But the internet is a little remote. I think a problem that should be tackled, and it's difficult because of the principles of free speech, especially the First Amendment in America. This is crazy. You have these imams preaching to violence all over, especially in France, and they step by step, they win more and more people. And I just gave you the example of the preacher in New York, another preacher in New York, and in Canada, and in Great Britain. There are so many of them. And could they stop them legally? I'm not sure, but at least they should make people aware of this danger. It is a danger. And I have to say, to some people, this preaching is very appealing. They promise them paradise. They promise them 72 virgins in paradise with black eyes. They seduce them. They tempt them into terrorist activity, into public activity, into this harassment. And some people in Europe, young students, have been enticed to take part of it. They don't know anything. I saw a poll taken about 6 months ago, asking students in California who were chanting from the river to the sea. So a professor there asked them in a short poll, small poll, do you know which is the river? Do you know which is the sea? And they know nothing about it. They're just being inflamed by this politics, and a lot of it is politics. Yes. So I don't have a medication. I don't have a trick for that. So I think that the thing to do, confronting it, is make more and more people aware, A, of the facts, B, of the danger.
Yes. Yes. Well, we are. I thank you so much. Our time is done, and just for closing this with a softer theme, the Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai wrote a beautiful poem about the Jewish people, in which he says, the Jews are not a historical people, and not even an archaeological people. The Jews are a geological people with rifts and collapses and strata and fiery lava. If you had to pick up, Ze'ev, one stone to define us Jews, what stone would that be?
The hardest stone in nature is diamond. Problem is that you have to be aware of the fact that diamond and coal are actually made of the same substance. But we have become hardened in the last 3,000 years. And it's invincible. Of course, there are great difficulties ahead, but it's invincible. And the more they attack us, the more we became stubborn. And some people don't like us for being stubborn Jews, but we're stubborn people. So we shall prevail. It'll take time. People should have some understanding for this beleaguered democracy. There's no other thing. There's no other democracy from all places. Attacked politically, attacked physically. I would expect people of fairness, of a goodwill, to demonstrate their identity with our cause. That they have some problems with us, yes. Are we always right? Maybe not. But on the basics, on the fundamentals, yes, here's a people, here's a group of people assembled from all parts of the world, and they want to live, and they want to see the next generation. Okay.
Yes. Bezrat Hashem, yes.
Okay, so you see, there's some advantage in geology.
Yes. And we are looking forward for your article. We thank you all for being with us. It is a pleasure, honor, a unique opportunity to talk with Ze'ev Begin. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for the presentation. Bye, you all. Shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
Let's
Shalom.
be hard as a diamond and as a coal.
Thank you for the opportunity. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
Okay.
Toda rabah. Shalom,
Okay.
shalom.
Off we are.